Just another brother with another humble question. Just another brother with another humble question.
Welcome to another episode of A Brother with Questions. I am your host, B. Period. Man, I appreciate you for joining me. We are going to dive in tonight. Let's celebrate first the Steelers. I recorded this after the NFL season kickoff. And so we know officially the Steelers beat the Atlanta Falcons today. You may say, well, but they didn't look good. I don't care. I care about W's. We'll worry about the offense looking better in the future. But today, it was a W. Then let's keep it moving, though. Please like and subscribe to the channel. Share too. Let your friends know what you're listening to. Man, I appreciate you. Today, man, we're going to dive into a Charleston White video. Now, if you don't know who Charleston White is, I would just say go Google the name Charleston White on the internet, and everything you probably would ever want to know, you can figure out from there. But we're going to take it's a quick little clip, maybe a minute, I believe. Yeah, 55 seconds. And we're just going to react to a little bit of this. Here we go. All right, so there it is. That's the video, man. I think the video itself, I'm going to stop sharing here. The video itself there were some things in there. He said we don't need to know the history at all. Okay. I think that's probably hyperbole. I think knowing history is a good thing. I think knowing history of Black people in the United States, I think there's a value in at least knowing that history. But I do agree with him that I think at times we place too much of a prevalence on knowing history when there's so much that we don't know today that would be so much more beneficial to us than history. So he hit three things. He talked about economics. And that's a big one, man. It's 2024 and most, I'm going to say most. And if you say most is too much, okay, I'm going to give you at least 50% then, 50, 60%. 50, 60% minimum, but it's probably closer to most, still don't understand economics in 2024. Even our young people, as quote unquote more educated that they may be, some of them, they still don't understand economics. And I would say that there's a higher value placed on knowing your history than there is in knowing something as fundamental as economics. I mean, most of them still don't know how to buy a house. Most of them still don't really understand their credit scores. That's another thing you mentioned, their FICO scores. And those things are going to be so much more influential on what their future looks like. But we'll spend, especially in my state, right? We're on this crusade about our government hating Black history, as if that's the thing that's going to help Black people move forward. And I think that's the disconnect. There's this value on knowing the Black history and how that's going to change our youth. And the reality is they don't care. They don't care about the history. They're so disconnected from what happened 20 years ago, let alone 100. And I agree. I don't know that it's going to benefit them, because all they do, most of them, when they view those kinds of stories, is they go, well, yeah, that ain't today. And then they move on. What if we place as much value on teaching them economics as we do history? Where could that take? Because we'll talk about, in Florida, Governor DeSantis, not wanting this AP course. We talked about that for months. But yet they added an economic component to at least schools in Florida, and you don't hear nobody talk. I'm sure it's not going to be enough. I'm sure it's only going to scratch the surface of what they would actually need to know. But at least it's better than nothing. But the sad part is most of the parents can't guide them in beyond wherever that course might take them, because they don't know either. And so when when we're trying to quote unquote fix the Black community, we're very rarely hitting on the steps and the points that are really going to impact the Black community. Because we'll start with history and we won't talk about economics. As Charleston White says, we're talking about Black history when you have, almost 70% of households, Black households, as single parent homes. Now, single parent, of course, just literally means that you live with either your mom or your dad. And then as I was doing some research about those statistics, it also means that you might live with a mom and a dad who have been together but aren't married. They still count you as a single parent home as well. But usually if you're in a single parent home, or at least some of those times, let's say that means one of those parents you may not be as familiar with. And if you're not familiar with one of those parents, then that means that you don't know, generally, that also means you don't know that parent side of the family. So we're talking about learning Black history, and as he says in the video, and you may not even know your dad. So if you don't know your dad, then you probably don't know your grandparents. And if you don't know your grandparents, right, we could go even further back. But we're trying to teach you about Black history. There's another video I saw with him, and he's talking about building Black communities, but we can't even talk to our sisters. We don't have conversations with our sisters. We don't like our sisters. We don't like our mamas. We don't like our daddies. But we're trying to build a Black community. But you can't even speak to your cousin. But you're going to build a Black community. The thing I liked about that video is it speaks to what we tend to focus on, but we don't put priority on the places that are actually going to take us forward. We got an election coming up. And right now, the leading candidate that they say Black people are supposed to vote for, leading candidate is pushing reproductive freedom. Reproductive freedom just is a sweet, sexy way of saying abortion. So her biggest platform that she repeats over and over is the right and the ability to have an abortion. And when I think about that, so we're having an argument about the ability to kill legacy. We're having an argument about the ability to make mistakes and then quote unquote correct. And when you think about the history of abortion and the history of Planned Parenthood, and how there were people in conversations in the beginning of Planned Parenthood of how we can limit the Black population, and then an execution plan that puts Planned Parenthood in some of the lowest income communities in the country. And yet we have these arguments about our right to kill legacy. It just speaks to how our priorities seem to be misaligned on how we're going to create a better Black community, create a stronger Black community. Because I fail to see how focusing on history, reproductive freedom, how that's going to bring anybody, how that's going to help anybody make more money, how that's going to educate people to a level where they can earn an income that's going to be above $50,000, how that's going to teach anybody about home ownership, how that's going to educate anyone on having a better credit score. How? When we can begin to have discussions, and it's really not about politics per se, but it's about having conversations that are actually going to impact us, building a family. When we can have these conversations, when less than 50% of us own our homes, when we can have these conversations and when we can impact change in these ways, that's when we'll see changes in the community. But right now, in this season, telling us voting for the Democrat is going to make it better when nothing in the platform is really aimed at making it better? We're lost. And it's time to wake up, find our way to real solutions in this country. The solutions that have been the foundation of this country since the beginning: family, ownership, entrepreneurship, education. And we can focus on those 4 things. We won't need a politician. We won't need a president. We won't need anybody to help the community. We'll start dictating, like other communities, places where we want them. When we can achieve that, we'll be on. And on that note, I'm B. Period, and I'm out.